Good morning, everyone. Today we'll start our lecture 4 on water retention in the soil. How water is held in the soil particle. There are two major forces that determine the water retention in the soil. The first is adhesion and the second is cohesion. As you all know that you have studied in your PUC, what is adhesion and what is cohesion? Adhesion means attraction between water molecules and the solid surface. If this is a solid surface and H2O water molecule, this attraction force we call it as adhesion. And what is cohesion? The attraction of water molecule for each other. The attraction of water molecule for each other we call it as cohesion. And these two major forces determine the water retention in the soil. By adhesion, some water molecules are held rigidly at the surface of the solid. In turn, tightly bound water molecules hold by cohesion and the water molecules farther away from the solid surface. So these are the two forces which determines the water with how tightly the water is held within the solid space with respect to water molecule, that is adhesion, and between the water molecule it is cohesion. So the adhesive force diminishes rapidly with the distance from the solid surface. As this is the water molecule and this is the solid surface. How it is attached? It is by the adhesion. If the solid particle is farther, the adhesion force starts decreasing, and the cohesion of water molecules to another results in the water molecule forming temporary cluster. This is a water molecule and this is a water molecule. It attached to each other, it forms a temporary cluster, and that constantly changes its shape. It can be any shape with the individual water molecules. The cohesion between the water molecules also allows the solid to indirectly restrict the freedom of water from some distance beyond the solid liquid interference. This force also determines the movement of water inside the soil. How much extent it has to move and how much quantity it can be moved determined by the cohesion between the water molecules. Yes, after understanding the force that acts for the water retention in the soil, we need to understand how water absorption by the plant takes place. There are two methods or two techniques how water absorption takes place. The one is active absorption and the second is passive absorption. Active, as the name itself indicates, absorb due to activities going on in the roots. The activities which are going on into the roots that determines the water uptake, we call it as active absorption, and the passive absorption is mainly by the osmosis from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. The next is absorption of water occurs with the help of energy. In case of active absorption, there is absorption or there is a taking of ATPs from the plant for absorbing the water, which is released due to the metabolic activities of the root cell of respiration. We call it as active absorption. In case of passive absorption, water is absorbed through the transpiration pull rate and high on the dry soil. So in case of active absorption, plant spends some energy to absorb the water, whereas passive absorption, plant uptake through the transpiration pull theory. So if passive absorption, less ATP is utilized. Absorption takes place against the concentration gradient. The term is very important. It takes against the concentration. This is the concentration gradient. Water absorption takes place against the concentration gradient even when the concentration of the sap is lower. Absorption takes place along the concentration gradient when concentration of cell sap is higher. And which among this is very important, plays a very important role. Passive absorption plays a very important role than active absorption. There is more than 90% of the absorption of water from the soil is from the passive absorption and less than 10% is contributed from the active absorption. Then after understanding absorption, when it plant, this is, if we take this as root, how it is absorbing from the soil, now we need to understand if this is the layers of the soil, in which layer how much percentage of water is absorbed and which layer irrigation is very important to absorb the water. If you see here, this is the picture which shows the layer of absorption. The first layer, second layer, third layer, fourth layer. 40% of extraction is taken from the first layer, 30% extraction taken from the second layer, 20% extraction from the third layer, and 10% extraction from the remaining lower layer. So irrigating at this upper layer, the 1/4 upper layer is very important with respect to increasing the water use efficiency. So upper layer, maximum root accumulation, maximum absorption of water takes place compared to the lowest layer of the soil. This is the extraction pattern. Coming to the understanding, we were talking about the soil-water relationship since from the class lecture 2. So we understood the factor affecting the water holding capacities of the soil. Then understanding that how this soil moisture energy relationship work. We understood the factor affecting the soil water absorption, soil. We understood the temperature. We understood the atmosphere. We understood the water holding capacity of the soil. After that, how this movement of water from the soil to the plant and to the atmosphere takes place, and that relation will be dealt in today's class. Energy concept, that is greater amount of water in the soil, less is the amount of energy required to be removed. See, this plant, if the water content is very high in the soil, the amount energy that is spent by this plant is very less. But where the water is very less in the soil, the energy spent by this plant is very more. And that is determined by a tension or a term called as soil moisture tension. What is soil moisture tension? The tenacity with which water is held in the soil particles is called as soil moisture tension. Generally given as SMT. SMT abbreviated as soil moisture tension. Soil moisture tension is a measure of tenacity with which water is retained in the soil. Several units are used for measuring the soil moisture tension, but mostly in terms of bar, which equally the pressure exerted by a vertical column of water. If you consider this is a column of water, a tube which is filled with the water, and the pressure exerted by the tube which is filled with the water, we call it as a tension, generally expressed in terms of a bar. One bar is equal to 0.986 atmosphere. 1 bar is equal to 100 centibar. The higher the height of water column or bar, greater will be the tension or suction. Means this is a water column. The higher the bar length, more will be the pressure exerted to remove the water from the soil to the plant. Soil moisture tension. Yes, soil moisture tension, we used to use the term bar, but expressing the things in bar, the value becomes very big. So, in order to reduce that value, they introduced the logarithm term by a scientist called as Scorfield in the year 1935. He brought a term called as P to the power F, PF. What it suggests, it is the use of PF which is defined as logarithm of negative pressure. It is a logarithm of negative pressure. The soil moisture tension, that is the log of soil moisture tension is what the negative pressure. It is minus log of soil moisture tension. Head of centimeter, tension of 10 centimeter of water is thus equal to the PF1. Why? Because minus log of 1 minus log of 10 is equal to 1, right? So it is expressed in terms of logarithm. Minus log of 10 is equal to 1. So it reduces the value. The bigger values can be reduced into the smaller one through the Scorfield unit. Likewise, the tension of 1000, it is log of 1000 is 3. In the same way, PF is equal to minus log of. So there are certain standard conditions, field capacity, permanent wilting point. We'll discuss this in next class. But here, if you see that the soil moisture tension at field capacity is minus 33 bar, and at permanent wilting point minus 15 bar. See, if that is expressed in terms of kilopascal, the values are like 33 kilopascal and 102 kilopascal, 1534 kilopascal, 1371 kilopascal. But when I am taking it in the logarithm term, minus log of 33, minus log of 337, it is equal to 2.52 value. At 1, the PF value is 3, that is equal to 1023 centimeter of water column. At the permanent wilting point, the PF value is 4.2, and that at hygroscopic coefficient, the permanent wilting points, the PF value is 4.5. Remember, the PF values are very important for the competitive point of view. PF value for the field capacity, it is 2.52. PF value for the permanent wilting point is 4.2. PF value for the hygroscopic coefficient is 4.5. The limitation of soil moisture tension is that soil moisture present is not only operated by tension, but there are other forces operating in the soil such as salt content, hydrostatic pressure, gravitational pressure. So soil moisture tension will measure only the operation by the soil matrix. The major lacuna with respect to measuring the soil moisture tension, there are other forces that also determines the water holding or affecting the water holding capacities of the soil. But here it only considers soil matrix. Yes, after understanding these things, we'll go ahead with the lecture 5, water, which are the forces that determine the water holding capacity of the soil. If you are liking my teaching, please support my channel and subscribe.